just about everyone. So why don't I get us started and then I will hand it off. So um, my name is Trish Brutz. I'm here at Bentley Memorial Library. We're so glad to have you here. So we'll ask if you are able to mute while Sherill is doing her presentation, and then you can post questions in the chat, or also I believe Sherill will have time at the end for people to ask questions as well. So thank you all so much for joining us. I know people have a lot of questions and it can be very confusing about what goes in the bin and what stays out and all those types of things. So let me pass you over to Sherill Baldwin. She's here with Connecticut DEEP, and I will pass it off to Sherill. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everyone for taking time out on a Monday night. I know Mondays are sort of a weird night. We often have a lot of meetings and whatnot. So thanks for joining me tonight to learn a little bit more about recycling. So I am going to share a PowerPoint presentation, and then I may ask you a couple of questions during the presentation, which you could respond to in the chat box if you wanted. And then I'm giving you a quiz at the end. So you better be paying attention. That's all I got to say. All right, so let me pull up my presentation. Okay, I will allow a lot, provide a lot of time at the end too for questions and answers. So really, even though I'm here to talk about recycling, it is really what we're talking about is how can we manage materials more sustainably. We no longer really call it waste. We really need to start calling it materials because those are resources that can be conserved and of course also recovered. However, we do call it a solid waste hierarchy in terms of how materials should be managed. And of course, the most important or the priority is really preventing waste. Preventing waste is the best thing we can do, and then reuse, recycle, recover, perhaps through energy recovery and or composting. And it's really because we're trying to dispose the least amount of materials so that we can reduce our reliance on waste to energy facilities and out-of-state landfills. Now, if you haven't been following the news, there is a bit of a waste crisis in Connecticut. And it's really because the Hartford facility, the waste to energy facility, will be closing soon. They've decided to close. The last I've heard was June 2022, so it's coming up very quickly. They burn about a third of our waste, our municipal solid waste in Connecticut. And if trash is hauled out of state, it means that our trash disposal costs are going to be increasing. In anticipation of this, in August of 2020, the department, specifically Commissioner Katie Dykes, and municipal officials from around the state convened and created the Connecticut Coalition for Sustainable Materials Management. It's also called CCSMM, or the Coalition, and they created a list of priorities that we really need to look at. How can we reduce more waste? How can we increase reuse activities? How can we encourage and incentivize food scrap collection programs, improve recycling programs such as reduced contamination, as well as the costs associated with those programs, and then implement new approaches such as a pay-as-you-throw program or EPR programs. So if you're not familiar, pay-as-you-throw is sometimes also called unit-based pricing. It's where it's not about recycling, it's really just about trash. And it treats trash like utility. So those of you who own a home understand that you have to pay for water, you have to pay for energy, perhaps it's electric, gas, or both. And you really don't want to pay your neighbor's utility bills. At least I don't. And so by treating it like the trash like a utility, it creates an incentive for all of us to conserve, reuse more, and then also try to improve our recycling habits. EPR, or extended producer responsibility, is a little bit different. That is looking at materials that could be recovered through recycling, or maybe hard to manage materials. And it's basically saying manufacturers or producers of products need to take responsibility for the end of life of that product. And it could be that legislation includes incentives to do other things like reduce toxicity or perhaps make materials more recoverable for reuse or recycling activities. This is a long list of stuff, but I wanted to let you know and give you a link if you're interested of that the coalition created a huge menu of options. Not every town can do all of them, but they tried to figure out a whole menu so that municipalities could pick and choose the things they thought they could do to try to reduce, reuse, recycle, compost, etc. Here are some of the solutions and interests that the coalition members had. Food scraps or for organics collection was a big one. Interested in EPR for a number of materials, recycling, anaerobic digestion, etc. And what is happening so far since that menu of option was created in December of 2020 is a public act was passed last year, actually requiring large organic waste generators who generate at least 20, oh, I have a little typo, it's supposed to be 26 tons per year, now have to recover that for composting or anaerobic digestion. Meriden is starting a new pilot program called co-collection. New concept for me when I first heard about it. They have, you know how you might have a cart for your trash? What they do is they have a colored bag, orange for trash, and then they have a colored bag green for food scraps. And they are collecting both food scraps and trash in the separate bags, but both bags go into the one cart. And then when it's dumped out, they pull it out and separate it by colored bags. It hasn't been done in many different places, so they're doing a lot of data collection, and we should learn more about that, hopefully in March. West Haven is also piloting something, a passive aeration composting, very interesting. Fairfield is starting to collect glass separately. Wilton is doing zero waste stuff in their schools, and everybody's looking at EPR, especially for packaging and gas cylinders. So it helps us sort of take a pause and recognize that as we think about the solid waste hierarchy, and even though we want to recycle better, there are other things that we could do before that as well, which is, of course, rethink, refuse, reduce. I know everybody's got different lists. Sometimes it's the 3 R's, the 5 R's, the 6 R's. I've got 5, so I've got 5 R's for us. Some personal changes we could do about purchasing. Thinking about what we purchase, how we purchase. Could we buy something used? When we're purchasing something, could it be something that could be repaired? I'm going to just take a pause here and make sure that you're on mute. I hear a lot of background noise, so if you want to take a moment and just mute yourself, that'd be great. Thank you. So when we're buying stuff, we always want stuff, but we have to think about, could we buy it in a different way? Perhaps we could buy it used. Maybe we could think about repairing what we already have. Do we need it long term, or do we just need it a couple times and maybe we could borrow it from a neighbor or a friend? And then, of course, libraries are fantastic because they're not just about books. You can borrow often other things as well. There are different ways that we could try to reduce the amount of food waste that we're generating. Make a shopping list before we go to the store, create a menu a few days or a week ahead. I know that's what I try to do. Freeze items before they go bad. Rotate food in your refrigerator. I know this next one, mark what dates for fridge and freezer. If you look at the photo, it's a little over the top for me. I can't do that. I do label for the freezer, but for the fridge, maybe not so much. However, it's great to sort of think about what can we do and how can we improve. If you do generate food waste, you could compost it. Or another way to reduce generating food scraps is join the clean plate club by using smaller plates. My husband, he'll eat anything that puts on his plate, but then he gets really full and then he hates wasting. So we also try to reduce the size of our plates so that we're not wasting any food. A lot of reuse opportunities. When we buy durable goods that can be repaired, we're preventing from the need to throw things away. donate unused items is great, but we also need to donate responsibly. You know, the charities that are looking for clothing may not want medical supplies. And of course, the charities that are looking for musical instruments don't want sports equipment. And so we really need to make sure that our donations are matching up with what the charity wants and is looking for. We should also think about repairing items. Maybe our communities could have tag sale days or maybe free days. Start a swap shop. Maybe you guys already have one in Bolton. I'm not sure if you do. Maybe coordinate a repair clinic, make mini libraries, and maybe expand the library offerings. I'm in New Haven, and they actually offer bakeware, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, personal changes. This is why you're here tonight, is to review the what's in and what's out to ensure you're not wish cycling. And you might learn about different things you might try to not buy because they're not acceptable in the program, or perhaps contact that company that makes your favorite peanut butter and you want it in that particular container, and you write them and you say, I love your peanut butter, but I don't like your package. And then, of course, there's ways in which you can get your town to, your town is, of course, already hosting tonight, which is great. You could also put the Recycle CT Wizard tool on your webpage, or use the new Recycle CT Wizard app. So let's take a moment and think about what is recycling. So I'm going to start in the right-hand corner where you see the guy in the yellow vest with the blue cart. And this is what we think about as recycling normally. We collect all our materials and we put them in our bin or our cart. We either put them on our curb or we bring it down to the transfer station, and we have recycled. We're done, happy. Well, this is a process, and it's a long process. And while we're at an important stage, we're at the very beginning, that material still needs to be sorted, and it needs to be processed by materials recovery facilities or MRFs. And those materials, once they're sorted and processed, they need to be baled. They need to be pulled together and tied together in different diameters and sizes to meet the specification. And you can't have plastic in your cardboard, and the plastic folks don't want cardboard in their plastic bales. And so they need to make sure that they are doing a good job of sorting to be able to meet that specification so they can sell the material. Now, on this left here, this is sort of a two-part stage to selling it. This is probably chipped up milk jugs, and they make beads. And so they're making a product, beads, and then they're selling it to a manufacturer that makes milk jugs. It could be cardboard is sold to a company that makes new board boxes like pasta boxes. But in this case, the plastic takes two steps. And then, of course, that material is sold to a dairy. You can see here that gal is holding a thing of milk, and then we buy that milk. And so this is what recycling is. It's collected, sorted, processed, sold to an end market, made into a new product, and then we buy it. So Connecticut's mixed recycling stream, in 2015, we did a waste characterization to understand what is still in our waste stream. But that's not what this is. At the same time, we wanted to understand what is the makeup of our mixed recycling stream or single stream. And here you can see over 50% is paper. We have aseptic cartons. That is like juice boxes and milk cartons. Plastic bottles, other recyclable plastic, glass bottles, also a large percent, aluminum cans, steel cans. And then we have this big green piece of the pie, a red piece of the pie, and that is contamination. That's things that have been rejected by the MRF because they don't want them. They're not marketable, they're not acceptable in the program, and they end up becoming trash. So it's important to think about, we purchase things in many different ways. We also have to think about that we dispose in many ways. Yes, we have a trash can, and yes, we have a mixed recyclables, But we also have a lot of other categories of how materials are managed and recycled. We collect brush separately. We collect textiles separately, clothing, linen, stuffed animals, and pillows, all collected, but separately. We have an electronics recycling program, again, recycled, but separately. We have a plastic film program at participating retail stores that they take back plastic bags and bubble wrap, etc. Great program that recycles, but it's separate from the mixed recycling. And then we have a food scraps program in many communities, or maybe you compost in your backyard. And then we might have bulky waste collection that takes appliances or bulky furniture or plastic furniture. We have a program that collects paint. Again, it's recycled, but it's separate from everything else. And then I just add Oscar because I love Oscar the Grouch. And sometimes we have to laugh at ourselves because trash can be fun. So our modern collection system is really mixed recyclables, increasing food scraps around the state, which is pretty exciting. Not in my town, but I compost in my backyard. And then trash. Now, a lot of you may have heard, single stream increases contamination, and it does. However, it was originally put forth by the industry, specifically waste haulers, collectors, and processors, because it takes less time to pick it up, and it's less collection time, as well as the number of trucks that come down your street, and moving to the carts versus the small bins, which many communities have done, also reduces any employees getting injured or hurt on the job, because they are usually collected semi-automatically, meaning the truck picks them up. But yeah, there's some drawbacks to it too. Lowers the value of the commodities, and it has increased contamination. And higher contamination is one of the factors that led to something called China's national sword, which you may have heard about. So China's national sword really began back in 2017, and the national policy was to start reducing the amount of materials that could be in a bale that was not supposed to be there. So if I've got a 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot square or cube, and that's my bale of cardboard, I might be allowed one soda bottle, or maybe one soda bottle and one wrapper from, I don't know, potato chips. But they may not allow 28 pieces of contamination or 38 pieces of contamination. And so what happened is China's national sword created stronger and stricter requirements to have cleaner and cleaner stuff. And some parts of the country had a really hard time meeting those new specifications. And then eventually, some of our materials were just outright rejected around the country. And that challenged us in terms of markets, as well as the prices of material. And then COVID hit, and COVID changed a lot of things. What was really interesting is that it caused a rise in domestic markets. And now domestic markets are really good. So again, think about the amount of materials that we generate. That paper, because it's 54% or 55% of our waste stream, our recycling stream, is really the most challenging, in the sense that we have a lot of material that's very heavy and very bulky that needs to be sold to end markets. So fiber is amazingly in a great position right now. Originally, after COVID began, there were some challenges because there were no commercial entities generating cardboard or paper for quite a while. And so there was a need and a demand for fiber or paper from the residential sector. And so prices started increasing. So the prices are really good right now. They're actually a little bit lower than they were in the fall, but still higher than December of 2020, and also seasonal decline is normal. And then OCC is old corrugated cardboard, and RMP is recycled residential mixed paper. And so residential mixed paper is always a lot less than cardboard, but still the prices are great. Plastic also has increased prices. You don't need to know all the details, but I know that everybody always says, is our stuff being thrown away? And it's not being thrown away. It is always sold. It's just whether or not it's sold at a good price or a low price. And right now, things are selling very well. So this is an interesting graph. So the Northeast Recycling Coalition does reports, I think 3 to 4 times a year, and they look at the average value of a ton. So think about the pie chart that said 55% fiber, and then all the other percentages of what materials is. If we took a ton of mixed recyclables, what is the value? And that's what this graph shows. It shows the average value of a ton of mixed recyclables in 2019 all the way until the fall of 2021. And it lets you see that the value without contamination continues to be worth a lot more. So the more contamination, the more things that are being rejected that we can take out of the recycling stream at the beginning of the system, the better. It's not only better for easy processing, but it also means that we're saving our towns money, because that's what really, we don't want to burden the towns by our inability to follow recycling guidelines. And I'm going to say it's not our fault completely, and I'll be sharing more about that in a minute, but we can do a better job. So this is where everybody says, but are we doing it wrong? How do we do it right? So yes and no, we're doing it right. And yes and no, we're doing it wrong. But there's a good reason for that. So this is a busy graph. But what I really want you to get out of this is you can see the 20,000 mark, maybe even the 15,000 mark at the end of 2016. What this graph is telling us is the number of new products that are put on our retail shelves every year. So about 15,000 new products are put on our retail shelves every year. So if you were going to email me and say, hey, is this acceptable in the program? I might say, I have no idea what product you're talking about. I've never seen it. I've never heard of it. I don't know what it is. You're going to have to send me a picture. And that's because it's not like the manufacturers tell us what's coming down the pipe. And the manufacturers also don't talk to the MRF operators to say, hey, is this going to be acceptable in your program? Is this going to be materials that you can process in your facilities? And so there's a huge disconnect. And there's a disconnect that causes and increases confusion for us when we are trying to recycle, as well as trying to educate about recycling, and of course, processing materials. I have to check in with MRF operators a lot about lots of new products that are just I'd never heard of, and then all of a sudden everybody's using it. Another thing that causes confusion is the arrows. The arrows should not be used as a guide. The arrows were originally designed to help us identify what type of plastic resin it is. It's really meant as an industry code, an ASTM code for industry to help them identify what resin it is so that they understand the melting point. However, in the 1990s, when recycling started increasing and started recycling these two guys, number 1 and number 2, it was used as a guide. But that was before all these products started coming on the shelves and all these new types of plastic and how plastic was used was created. And now you really can't use these as a guide. The best thing to do is check in with the What's In, What's Out app or the search tool on the web page. So this is when the quiz begins. So I encourage you to open your chat and let me know what you think. First, recycling is the law. If you didn't know that, it is. And so the first quiz is, what year did Connecticut have legislation mandating that certain materials be recycled? Was it A, 1975, B, 1989, or C, 2012? So in the chat, you can either put the year or you can put the letter. So Jean has guessed 1975. Anybody else have any guesstimates or knowledge? Patrice has said 1989. Anybody else? Anybody else want to give a guess? Oh, Janet's also said 1989. We got two people saying 1989. Anybody else? Anne's also going to guess 89. Excellent. Anybody else? Okay, I will tell you. It is 1989. 1989. So Connecticut, I'm not originally from Connecticut, but Connecticut is really progressive, having passed a law mandating recycling as far back as 1989. It was implemented in 91, and nobody guessed 2012. But in 2012, the list of materials that are mandated by law got added to. And so often people will guess 2012 as well, and that, in my mind, is somewhat correct as well, because another law was passed allowing or adding more materials to the list. So these are all the materials that are required to be recycled. It's a big list. If you generate these materials, you should be recycling them. However, if you don't generate them, you don't need to be recycling them. I, for instance, can't remember the last time I generated a motor vehicle battery, but if you do generate, these materials should be properly disposed and or recycled. And if we look at the top of the list, you can see these are the materials that go in our mixed recycling bin. Nothing has really changed since 2012. Even though single stream or mixed recycling was instituted, it didn't actually change anything. We may be able to recover a few more things, but mostly it is this material. And you'll notice that glass, metal, and plastic all include the terms food and beverage containers. It is true we can do a couple of other types of containers beyond food, but very few. We also have corrugated cardboard, box board, which is like pasta and cereal, newspaper, magazines, and then office paper. We also have a bottle bill program. And I wanted to include the bottle bill because it changed a little bit with legislation last year, and I want to make sure that everybody is aware of it. So originally the law passed in '78, it was implemented in 1980, and it was really an anti-litter program as a way of giving an incentive for folks to stop throwing them on the curb or in the streets, or et cetera, and instead keep them so you can get a nickel back. And in 2009, water bottles were added, and then in 2021, a lot of different changes happened. All right, for some reason my thing isn't moving forward. Here we go. So just to 1980, it was all pretty much carbonated beverages like beer, soft drinks, and mineral water. 2009, water bottles were added. And then last year, a huge range of materials were added: hard seltzer, hard cider, plant water, juice drink, tea, coffee, kombucha, plant infused drink, I don't know what that is, sports drink or energy drink. And while it passed in 2021, it's not going to come into effect until January 1st of 2023. But it's important to know it's coming. Also, they increased from 5 cents to 10 cents for the deposit, but that too won't go into effect until January 1st of 2024. And then a weird thing that they added too was that they added a 5-cent surcharge to the miniature liquor bottles. And those miniature liquor bottles, it's not a deposit. They actually are charging 5 cents more. So if you are somebody that buys them, you might have noticed the price went up, and that's because they now have a surcharge. And that surcharge is being collected, I believe, by the Connecticut liquor distributors, and that they're somehow going to be giving that money back to municipalities. And the 5-cent surcharge went into effect in October, and I believe they're going to be telling municipalities how many mini liquor bottles were sold in those towns, and then give them the nickel back for litter and anti-litter and recycling programs. We also have something called EPR programs. I mentioned EPR at the beginning, where it is a priority for the coalition, or CCSMM. And while we have programs for electronics and paint, mattresses, and thermostats, there is interest in really expanding EPR programs in Connecticut. So what this means, of course, is that manufacturers of electronics or paint, mattresses, etc., basically are responsible for creating a program that collects the material or reimburses collection of these materials, and then also processes the disposal or the recycling. Paint is a great example. A lot of paint is recovered, reused, or recycled. And then when they can't recycle it, they properly dispose of it through a high heat incinerator program, because it is a fuel, especially oil-based. So there are different ways in which these programs manage material, but they too follow the hierarchy, doing waste prevention, reuse, recycle, etc. We have other programs too. Household hazardous waste event, textile recycling. It could be either at your transfer station, sometimes they're collected at schools, or maybe through local charities. Food scraps, maybe are your towns considering it, or maybe you already have it, maybe you do it in the backyard. Maybe books, your town might have a book sale at the library every year. Maybe the Lions collect eyeglasses. Local thrifts and charities collect dishes and other household items. Your town transfer station might collect bulky rigid plastics, such as 5-gallon buckets. Local stores and retailers collect plastic bags. And then more and more towns are doing paper shredding events to ensure that that material is recycled, since it's not acceptable in the mixed recycling program. And then Recycle CT provides a recycling education program. They really are trying to promote what goes in and what doesn't go in. The department created a universal list so that all MRF operators have met and discussed what should go in and what should stay out, so that we can promote one universal list across the state. And then Recycle CT has a wizard or an online search tool, as well as an app. If you're not aware, I first met with the MRF operators in 2017 to create a universal list, and we meet on an annual basis now, just reviewing the list. And what we do is we think about every single product that we can, and what it's, the packaging and what it's made out of, and ask these questions. Is this material detrimental to your employees? Is this product or material detrimental to your equipment, meaning it's going to harm your equipment? Or is it detrimental to the value of the commodities that you're trying to sell, meaning it's going to contaminate it and your commodities will be rejected and you won't be able to sell them because of this product? And that is how we created the list. Again, through the characterization, we can see that 18.2% of the materials coming in 2015, before this program began, the #1 contaminant was plastic bags and bagged material. So about 50% of the rejected materials were plastic bags or bagged material. So if we can reduce the amount of plastic bags alone in our recyclables, that would be amazing. And it's hard, right? Can you tell the difference, which one is trash and which one is recycling? Of course, it's a trick. They're the same exact photos. And the point is that if you've ever seen videos or pictures of a MRF, what happens is you pull into the facility, they dump the recyclables on the floor, and then a machine pushes the materials that get put up into a conveyor belt. And then the first line of defense are people. They're our friends and our neighbors, and they are the ones that are on the line, and they have to pick out contamination and pull off things that might injure the line before they go off for the magnet or the blower or the optical scanner for other materials to be sorted. And so when they go at a really fast pace, so when bags come in, they're not opening them and going, oh, are these really nice, clean recyclables in here? Or is this trash? They just have to assume it's trash and it all gets tossed. So don't bag your recyclables. Top 5 contaminants, of course, plastic bags. Shredded paper is a big one. Bagged recyclables or bagged waste. Tanglers. Things that get tangled up in the equipment are a big problem. It could include wires, but it could also include things like clothing because it gets tangled up. And then bottle caps and other small things that contaminate the glass. So if nothing else, just stop putting bags in. Tell your neighbors to stop putting bags in and don't bag your materials. So this is why. I don't know if you can see. So this right here is a machine, and it's got like these knives, and they alternate. And so what happens is it pushes bottles and other things up on the system, but it can't do that because they get wrapped with plastic and other tanglers. The other thing you should be aware of is this yellow shirt. This is a man. This is a man that 3 times a day, staff have to jump into this equipment with those knives. It's been turned off, but still with the knives, they have to jump down and manually cut all the plastic and tanglers off 3 times a day. So if any of you are in the business world or manufacturing, if you have to shut down your system 3 times a day for 15, 30, or 30 minutes or 60 minutes every day, that's a huge loss. It's a huge cost. No wonder it costs money for us to recycle, because they have to take time and shut down the line so they can cut all this plastic off. And this is all the plastic it cut off while I was just standing there for 10 or 15 minutes taking photographs and talking about the problem of plastic film. You can see other tanglers in there too. It's a real problem. So it just is a great reminder we can do better. We can do just one thing, we can do better. So why do we want to do better? We're at the front end of the collection. We need to make sure that our materials are cleaner so that it's easier to process the materials. Materials can meet those specifications to ensure that our materials are sold and can be made into new products, because that's the whole point of recycling. So if we can't reduce our contamination, it means that we're not completing the cycle. And then let's break some myths. All pizza boxes are in. I know it used to be like, some grease, no grease, a little grease, just the bottom, blah, blah, blah. Well, since 2017, it's been all pizza boxes, just no food or liners. And a lot of things are out. No loose bottle caps, no coffee pods, no shredded paper, no plastic bags, no polystyrene, which you might call styrofoam, and no black plastic, unfortunately. The optical scanners cannot see black plastic. And then there are other things that are just trash. Single-use coffee cups, single-use straws, moldy, mildew textiles, used pens and pencils, broken garden hoses, pop balloons, etc. So this is glass at a MRF in 2015. It's hard to see the glass, isn't it? It's hard to see the glass because of all the small things. what happens is glass is the last thing in a MRF, right? Goes through the conveyor system and aluminum is blown off and steel is pulled off by magnets, and optical scanners can read the different plastics, and cardboard and paper are, because they're heavier, go first. But glass goes through the whole system, and it takes with it all the little, I'm just going to say it, crapola. It's all the crappy stuff. It's all the stuff that shouldn't be in there, and it gets mixed in with the glass. Batteries, bottle caps, lip balm, pens, tampon applicators, etc. So great reminder that not everything is acceptable in the program. Other things, the MRF operators want me to remind everybody: no batteries, no syringes, no propane tanks, no ammunition. Believe it or not, they find ammunition. Lawnmower blades are a really big issue apparently in the summer. Just because it's metal, it's not acceptable. It should be put into your scrap metal program at your transfer station. Knives or other utensils, think of your neighbors and friends that are on the front line picking through our materials. The same for the diapers and other things that are just yucky. So this is the recyclect.com webpage, and this is the search tool where you can type in a material and ask the question about whether or not it's in or out, or what else could you do with it. And it's now in an app form. So if you have a smartphone and you like to play with apps, you could download the recyclect Wizard app and ask questions directly. And then the recyclect.com webpage also has other things. They have flyers that can be downloaded and printed. You can also do bill inserts or postcards or tip cards. These are tools that are meant for municipalities to be able to educate and promote residents. It's also for facility operators and haulers. And if nothing else, I ask you to ask yourself, is this acceptable in this program? So a lot of things are recyclable, but not everything is acceptable in our mixed recycling stream. So hopefully that was interesting. And so if you would like to, I invite you to show us your video. And if you don't want to, you can answer the quiz questions by using the icons. If you go to, I can't see it, but usually there are icons you can use. Oh, I can't see any icons. Maybe there's no icons in the system. Well, you can give me your responses up or down in the chat. I'm going to ask yes or no questions. And so if your video is on, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. This is in and this is out. And you can give me in or out in the chat as well. And then I will ask, I will take a bunch of your questions, which I see are moving in at a rapid pace. So should I start easy or hard? I'm going to start easy. I have a paper egg carton. Is this in or out? Excellent, Jean. He was fast. Good, Trish. Excellent. This is in. Now I have an egg carton and it's styrofoam. Is this in or out? You are correct. It is out. All right, I'm going to get harder. Are you ready? I have a big plastic thing that has like spinach or lettuce and sometimes other vegetables. Is this in or out? Boy, Jean, you're going to, oh, you too, Anne, you're going to get the prize. This is in. And again, if you say what type of plastic or is there an arrow, we don't have to think about the arrows. It is a food container, and so it is in. All right, little aluminum pan from a takeout container. This is in. All right, this is a plastic mayonnaise jar. Is this in or out? Yep, that's in. All right, I'm going to get harder. I feel like I'm too easy. All right, this is a shampoo bottle. In or out? You are correct, Jean. I saw you hesitate. You too, Anne. So there's not a lot of non-food containers that are in, but there are some bathroom containers that are in, and shampoo and things like this are them. They're similar to our food products. They just happen to have cleaning materials in it. So we don't want any stuff that had toxic stuff in it, but we can accept shampoos and soaps and stuff. Here's another great example, in or out? Janet and Jean, you're both right. Okay, so what I would do with this is the container is in, but the sprayer is out. So I would remove the sprayer. And then the container is in.
Or save the whole thing and use it for homemade sprays, cleaning.
There you go. That's right. Non-toxic stuff. All right, so here's another hard one. This is a potato chip can. Industry calls it a spiral wound container. Is this in or out? This is out. That's right. So Patrice, I'm watching you. I'm sorry I didn't see you earlier. So this is a spiral wound container. I had never heard that term before meeting with the MRF operators about the in and out list. And they absolutely hate these. I had no idea that they hated them so much, but they do. Some of them have metal on the bottom, like this one. There's also metal around the top. And then it's a metal foil on the inside. So it's actually metal and cardboard. It's a weird material. Other products that come in spiral wound, things like raisins, dried fruit, nuts. I'm amazed at how many spiral wound containers are out there, and they are not acceptable in the program, which is a bummer. Another example is oatmeal. There are different types of oatmeal. In this case, it's a cardboard bottom, and I have seen them where it's a cardboard top. And if that's the case, that's okay. I mean, it's so confusing. This one has a little plastic lip on it, though. So I would say if you don't want to deal with taking the plastic off, just put the whole thing in the trash. If you're an Uber recycler and you want to take that plastic off to make sure that it's acceptable, that's fine. But you can't do anything with the ones that have raisins in it, or it's a different type of paper, apparently. All right. I have a plastic hanger. It's a beautiful plastic hanger. Are you sure? It's beautiful. It's plastic.
For one thing, it's black. Nobody wants black.
Yeah, you're correct. That is out, out, out. All
And it's a
right.
combination of materials. Anything that has two materials in it is out.
Yep. What about a cork? It's a beautiful cork. It's all natural.
Yeah, but it's out.
You're correct. Gene, you getting them all? Why are you?
I'll tell you why, Cheryl. I've read this book from our library. It's called "Can I Recycle This" by Jenny Romer. It's a wonderful book. Yeah, it's a great book.
Save the corks, because people with disabilities build them into birdhouses and cork boards right across from Rockville Hospital. There's a great tip.
There's a lot of people that will reuse corks. I know I save them. I give them to a creative reuse center. All right, I'm just going to ask.
I suppose they're compostable, though. As a natural product, Cheryl, wouldn't they be compostable?
Yep, you will find that, you know, just like every other industry, you have cork and then you don't have cork, right? There's new kinds that are non-cork.
Yeah.
And then you also have some that are mixed that have a plastic top but a cork bottom. So you guys probably know what to do with the garden hose. Yeah. See, you guys are too knowledgeable. All right, I'll give you two more. I have a ripped sock.
What about the garden hose?
But Cheryl, you know about garden hoses, when they break in one place, you can often mend them with a repair coupling
You can.
Or-
You notice mine's
or-
a small piece.
Or use them for other things. When you have to tie a tree up, wrap the cord around the hose around the tree to protect the young tree.
Same thing with my old sock. I could repair it. I could make it into a puppet, or even ripped textiles are acceptable in textile recycling programs.
Mm.
So that's important to know. So this had batteries in it. Is this in or out?
No.
Oh, I stumped you, Jean.
Is it too small? It's number
It's
one
because
plastic,
it's not a
isn't it?
container. It's not about what it is. It's not a container.
Mm.
Yeah. So this type of bubble plastic or hard plastic, where you have to cut it open and you pull out the whatever was in there, this is all out.
Yeah.
I know. It's crazy. It's sad. So let me see what you guys have been asking me. All right, so I missed it. Oh, Jean, you asked about the pie chart of recycled content is by weight.
Okay, that's why glass was so
Because-
big and aluminum so
it's
small.
because it was a waste characterization study, and they do it by weight. I got a question about wax containers. Janet, can you elaborate and tell me what kind of wax containers you're specifically?
Cheese, man.
Just like some milk comes in wax containers, or soy
like
milk
a
comes
milk.
in
I don't.
wax.
Milk cartons.
I don't
sorry.
have
Yeah.
one, but milk cartons are acceptable. So aren't juice cartons. Cartons that have soup or cartons that have, those are all acceptable, including the boxes are acceptable. So those are acceptable in the Connecticut program. Milk cartons.
Jenny Romer points out that they have to go to a special mill, though, that can separate the coating from the paper. It's the paper fibers they want.
I'm sorry, I froze for a moment. What did you say, Jean?
Jenny Romer points out that milk cartons, orange juice cartons, all coated cartons have to go to a special mill that can separate the plastic from the paper fibers. So
a lot of
some
those
places
have,
in the country, some
A lot
places
of
in the
those-
country might not have one nearby.
a lot of
and-
those have a plastic piece that's the spout. Does that, so that's okay as well then?
That is okay. That's okay. Yeah, the facilities in Connecticut, sometimes they will pull them out. There's a separate grade. Just so you know, there's like, I mean, maybe Jenny talked about this, there's like over 50 grades of fiber. But grade 51 is the one for milk cartons and aseptic packaging. And we have a facility actually in Connecticut that accepts them. They don't actually collect them for the fiber. Yep, they don't collect them for the fiber. What they do is they make architectural ceiling tiles out of them. So
including the aseptic packaging, which is two materials bonded together. That's surprising.
That's why not everybody is the same. So across the border, Massachusetts doesn't do milk cartons, but we do. Okay, I picked up cans and bottles inside the road when I hike. How can I get rid of the little miniature bottles? Sadly, you have to put them in the trash.
Yeah.
I actually, this past summer, I asked the facilities if somebody did a collection program and they had like bags and bags of the little miniature liquor bottles, would they accept them because they were source separated and they wouldn't contaminate the glass? And they said no, they'd be impossible to bail up. So sadly, we need to throw them away.
And the really sad part is they're made of #1 PET plastic, which is a valuable material, but they're too small for the machines.
Yep. Our styrofoam and tinfoil. Styrofoam, so there's a difference between is it acceptable and is it recyclable? So the question is are styrofoam and tinfoil recyclable? So aluminum foil, is acceptable in the program as long as it's clean. So I know if I had like a big sheet and it was like covered with grease and mucky muck, I'm probably not going to clean it. I'm probably going to toss it. But if it was covering the top of a pie and I just have to clean it a little bit, I might scrunch it up just slightly and put it in the bin. Expanded polystyrene or styrofoam may have collection programs somewhere in the country, but they're not acceptable in our mixed recycling in Connecticut. There is a new restore that opened in the last few weeks in Vernon. Wow, that's great. If you don't know what that is, a Habitat for Humanity restore is a building materials reuse store or thrift shop where they have furniture and other building materials. That's great.
It's right opposite the bowling alley on Route 83.
Nice. I believe batteries have quite a few recoverable minerals. How can we recycle batteries? Great question. Connecticut has tried to do battery EPR before. They have tried to create an EPR program for batteries, but was not successful. Vermont has an EPR law for batteries. They were successful in passing it, but Connecticut was not. That is probably the best way to ensure that batteries are collected. Currently, we require that rechargeable batteries do not get put in the trash, as well as lithium batteries should not be put in the trash. And that's because they're hazardous in the trash as well as the recycling bins. So those should be collected separately. Your town transfer station might do it, or if you're part of a household hazardous waste day, regular household batteries can actually go in the trash. There's less and less recoverable in there. However, there could be programs, but they would have to probably be managed by the manufacturers to make it cost effective, because right now it's not cost effective.
Sherill?
What happens to plastic bags that are used to, sorry, Jean, I'm still trying to get through the questions. What happens to plastic bags that are used to collect trash? They are put in the trash. What happens to plastic bags that are used to collect trash? Oh, trash bags? Well, your trash goes to a waste to energy facility. So they're burned.
Until July.
Oh, are you guys contracted with Mira?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sherill, Home Depot and Lowe's both accept rechargeable batteries for recycling.
Great. That's great. I would call that, that's like a voluntary stewardship program where a lot of retailers and other businesses will participate in collection programs. I live near IKEA, and IKEA collects fluorescent bulbs, which I love to put there.
By the way,
a lot of cardboard.
The Habitat store will accept paint too. I mean, it's got to be a reasonable quantity, not just the bottom of the can, but.
That's right, which is great. And that's unique to the Paint Care Law program, that we ask them to try to think about the hierarchy. And it's really nice at Paint Care, you know, and the way that the law reads is that you can reuse it first. Somebody has a question. A lot of cardboard has glossy paper on it, and it varies how much. E.g., oatmeal has some gloss. Other products have more. I'm never sure how much gloss is too much guidance. So I think when you're talking about cardboard, you're thinking about paperboard. Is that what I'm guessing? Like cereal boxes, granola bars, pasta, crackers, cookies. In this case, it's crackers. So all paperboard is acceptable. It doesn't matter what's printed on it. Doesn't matter how glossy or unglossy, it is all acceptable. I'm trying to figure out if I have another example.
Even if sometimes this is Polly had the question, sometimes it feels like it has an outer layer that's more like a separate thing connected to the cardboard.
Can you give me an example of the product?
Of course, the only thing that's coming to mind is oatmeal, but others have thicker ones. Maybe some frozen foods.
Yeah, frozen food boxes are different. Frozen food boxes are not paperboard, and a lot of frozen food boxes are not accepted. It's actually a different type of paper. That's why I don't have one, but that's why ice cream cartons are out and milk cartons are in. I have asked this question of the Carton Council, and it has to do with the type of paper it is, and it has a certain wet gradeness, and that makes it a different material that is not acceptable in the program. I can't tell you more than that. This is why it gets really complicated, and why it'd be nicer if manufacturers made, packaging that we could all just follow and have an easier time of it.
A related question to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You mentioned
ahead.
frozen food, and I know a lot of things come in white cardboard, and I used to hear that white cardboard is not recyclable. Is that still true?
Well, if it's frozen food, the frozen food containers are not acceptable.
Okay.
Sorry. And if you were doing it before, don't feel bad. But hey, now you know. Now you can do better.
How about margarine boxes?
Those are acceptable because that doesn't have the margarine touching it, right? That's like what you're talking about, a box that has like wrapped. Yeah. Loose bottle caps are out. Are they in if attached? Yes. So if I have a milk jug, I will keep it on. But if it's off, I should throw the bottle cap away.
Jenny Romer suggests an idea for steel bottle caps. Put them in a steel can that has the cover partly removed, and then close that cover so that it's all steel and it should all go in the steel bin.
That's a good
Clever
suggestion. Yeah.
I'm trying
what can I do with an expired smoke detector that wasn't accepted by hazardous waste? I'm not sure. Does anybody from the town know what your town does with smoke detectors? Usually it's HHW events that would accept them. If they didn't take it, I'm not sure why they wouldn't take it. There are some smoke detectors that don't have any hazardous materials in them. It kind of depends on the brand. And I believe some smoke detectors you can send back to the manufacturer if you have that information.
I think Home Depot and Lowe's might take them back. And the ionization detector types have a radioactive material, so they need to be recycled
usually those
properly.
are the ones that usually the HHW events take those back. What states or countries have standards for acceptable containers so that the recycling industry can deal with all containers? Well, I can tell you Connecticut was one of the first. We were the first to come up with a universal list, and now everybody's kept following us. And California is pushing forward to actually, they passed a law last year that manufacturers are no longer allowed to put the chasing arrows on their products because it misleads it misleads residents about whether or not it's acceptable. Yeah, the chasing arrows. So that's kind of interesting. So there is some conversations about standardization. When Connecticut created their list, we had conversations with Vermont, Massachusetts, and New York to try to understand what their programs were and kept them in mind when we created the list. And Massachusetts and Connecticut have very, very similar lists, very small amount of materials that are different. Why is shredded paper out? Is it because it gums up the system? It definitely gums up the system. Little paper gets into everything, including glass. It gets in with the plastic. And then it also becomes an air quality issue because when they keep pushing the recyclables and up to the conveyor belt, bags of paper just become confetti and it just fills the air of the facility.
Sherill, there is a great use for shredded paper. Compost it. You need carbon to mix with your nitrogen.
Yeah, I wouldn't compost white paper. I also wouldn't compost magazine paper. But you could if you wanted, but I don't think I would. Not white paper. I'm going to try to get through the rest of the questions. I saw Trish come on. She's probably trying to close me down. Do you have to rinse out the containers before recycling? Just make sure that the food is out. Envelopes with plastic windows are okay. Does DEEP develop law proposals for the legislature to solve problems like required container materials? DEEP puts forth a legislative package every year, and they have to develop a list of priorities, and then they put them forth. There's also a lot of other people that put forth legislation every year about a range of different things. I believe there is legislation right now for packaging EPR, which, like mattresses and paint and electronics, the manufacturers would be responsible for developing a program for all of our packaging. That would be a huge difference. A black food container you get from takeout is not recyclable. It may be recyclable, but it's not acceptable. I'm just going to repeat that again. A lot of things are recyclable, but black plastic is not acceptable in Connecticut's program because you can't, the optic scanners don't pick up black plastic. Are pastries that come in thin, hard, clear plastic recyclable? Again, they are recyclable and they are acceptable in the program. Just eat your pastry before you put them in the bin. All right, Trish. How was that?
Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. And
It was awesome.
yes, and this is Liz Thornton, our director here at Bentley Memorial Library. And if people have more questions, certainly feel free to post anything else in the chat. But this was phenomenal, Sherill. Thank you so much. As you can tell, people really needed some clarification. It's confusing, and we really appreciate all of your efforts in sharing the information. And I also want to let people know, you were talking about how you want to reuse things, and we just actually were gifted, boy, I don't know how many baking pans. We already had a collection, and then people buy some to make for birthday parties and things that they're not going to use again. And we have quite a few we're putting together. We have a book here. We'll be adding to that. So we try to make use and let people reuse those types of items. All
That's
right.
great.
Oh,
yeah, libraries are the greatest resource in our community.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Sherill. This is really an amazing program, and it was very, very helpful. So I know that everyone here really appreciated it, and I just wanted to thank everyone for joining in. There's a wonderful attendance for this program.
Absolutely. I see some thank yous there in the chat as well for you, Sherill. And thank you everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful night. Our newsletter is coming out later on tonight to let you know what's upcoming for programs in March. We do have a charcuterie board program coming up on Thursday, and Lenore DeBellis is going to show you how to make stunning and not that hard, but beautiful boards. We've got a story time on Wednesday, the 16th. We're doing a teen and tween paper bag star program on Saturday, the 12th. The story time and the paper bags are in person. A booster clinic on the 22nd, and then another adult book discussion at the end of the month. So keep an eye out for those.
And I also want to mention, if anyone, whoever here is a Bolton resident and didn't get to pick up like COVID test kit last time the town gave it out, the library will be giving out COVID test kits and N95 masks this Saturday from 11 to 2. So stop by and pick up a kit.
Excellent. Well, Sherill, thank you again.
Great.
This was fantastic. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you.